In this particular demonstration, we're going to take a look at some of the geometry tools and the basics of the tasks that are included. In the general geometry category, a couple of things that you're going to want to get familiar with very quickly is number one, under general geometry in the civil tools is the design standards toolbar. What the design standards toolbar does is allows us to pick standards based on 2-lane or 4-lane and the maximum superelevation rate. Once we have a particular entry selected, then we can choose to base that on passing site or stopping site distance calculations. And then when we're ready to take advantage of the design standards, we can activate that particular selected design standard, and that will then compute our minimum radius that we are to use when we are designing geometry, either in the horizontal geometry or in our vertical profile geometry. So typically I like to open this and have it docked, and I will go ahead and not have it activated until I need it, but once I need it I want to make sure and activate. And then the other icon here is to set a design standard on a curve or a profile curve once it has been drawn, so you can go ahead and set it after the fact. The second toolbar that is very important is the feature definition toolbar, and this allows us to pick a particular active feature, and I generally like to have that docked as well, and this is the icon that we want to make sure we activate when we get ready to place geometry. So those two are very key. Some of the other things under general geometry, just to point out quickly, is the ability to import geometry, and that's from a GPK file or a land XML file. We can export to the GPK or to other formats as well. And then we can create civil rules on regular microstation elements after we set features on those. So just a few things that are significant. On the horizontal geometry, one of the key commands that you're going to use here is placing the line between points to develop your tangents. There are several different commands here, and just a couple of things to point out. You can change the layout mode to your personal preference. And when you see these arrows, that generally means that there are other commands under here. So if you hold down your mouse, you can see, for example, on the offset command, I can single offset an entire element or partial or variable offset taper and so on. And so when you see those arrows, that's important. This particular one, this complex by elements, is how we create essentially a complex chain and send that back to native. And so as we develop our tangents and our curves, when we're done, we'll switch over from typically a geometry scratch feature, which does not send stuff back to the GPK file, and we'll switch over to a feature that will then plot our stationing and tip marks, for example. A couple other things here to point out. The start station allows us to set our starting station value, and then the add station equation to our geometry is also extremely useful. And so a lot of these commands are pretty much common sense, but the horizontal geometry report is easy to use as well. Once your geometry is established, you can select that and your geometry will give you a report. So we have several different tools available to us on the horizontal geometry, and likewise we have the same scenario for vertical geometry. We'll be looking at storing profiles in another video, but these are just kind of an introductory video showing you some of these tools. And so we have different ways to develop our profiles, for example, from an active surface, or we can also project profiles to elements, and etc. So a lot of different tools here for developing different aspects of the profile and also reporting on profiles. And so you can get your profile or your third dimension from a lot of different areas within our corridor modeling aspects.